Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few hardened enemies turned friends over a cup of black coffee come together and hash out a improvisational story for you to enjoy or to throw in the trash like a steaming pile of unsharpened pencils. How about that? I'm Seth.
I'm Reed.
And I'm, of course, Levi.
All right. And so this week, we are starting something a little bit new. We talked about it last week, where we're going to try to change the style of how we do this. So what we're going to do is this week, I have put together a bit of a genre and picked out some story elements. And then I'm going to moderate and kind of pull the story out from Levi and Reed to kind of get us a setup here. And Absolutely. So we're going to give that a try. I think it, lends a little bit more to the improvisational style. So we're going to see how it goes.
It could work really well.
Or it could end terribly.
Yeah.
Like the kamikazes in World War II.
This could be the last episode of Wait, It Gets Better, depending on how well this works out.
If you so care about us and want us to have a lot of wonderful time doing many other things, then please write in and tell us we should stop doing this. But if you love that we take time out of every week and do this for you, and only you, obviously.
Yeah, our one listener.
Then please write in and tell us that you want to move on to a property and call us Pope or something. I don't know.
Yes. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. Or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast.
All right.
All right, Seth, what do we got?
So, I picked out for genre historical fiction, alt fantasy. I did it that way, and I'll explain kind of what the genre setup would be here in a second. Because I know we've done a few that are like alt history, right? And then sometimes It can be fun. I think one of the last ones we did with like the folk heroes and stuff, right? It was kind of fun, but then I think we trip over ourselves maybe trying to super align the alternative history through imagined things. So although I think we'd all agree, I think we like historical fiction's pretty interesting. So
I like them a lot.
Yeah. And so I put the alt on the fantasy so that it could kind of take more of a alternative fantasy based on the historical fiction from a possible historical lens, or however we want to do it, so that it also fits in kind of like its own sandbox.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the genre, if that makes sense, how that was explained.
Absolutely.
And so the setup for it is going to be, it's a group of crusaders heading to the Holy Land, but they get shipwrecked and wash ashore in an alternate world, right? Think, kind of like going through the wardrobe in Narnia, right? So it's kind of, so taking the alternate historical things we might want to do, but that's what I mean, putting it in its own sandbox. So what we want to do with it can happen kind of in its own place.
Okay. I like it. I was thinking when you were talking about the alternate history thing, I was thinking about the ship that went to Vinland after Leif Erikson got back to Norway,
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about that today.
Did a ship go? And if it did, what happens if it were to have ended up in Middle Earth or whatever?
Yeah.
Because isn't Prince Caspian, some of the humans in Prince Caspian are people who were pirates, and they went into a cave and they popped up in Narnia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, which the Viking thing that you mentioned, I mean, unrelated to this, I brought that up with someone earlier today, like with Cortez and the Indians there, where in some of those records, the Indians, or the Aztec, I don't know, it wasn't the Aztecs, but whatever tribe, there was like a couple tribes over there that had the legend that some tall, white, blonde-haired, bearded, quote-unquote gods came on a flying raft and basically told them to stop doing human sacrifice, and that they would be back. But then they never came back for like a couple hundred years, and then Cortez shows up and they're like, oh, you're the like tall white people, that must be you guys coming back, right? And then you find out that like those couple tribes that had that legend of that happening and were waiting for those people to come back, right, were some of the only tribes in the area that were not doing atrocious things like that in human sacrifice.
Cool.
But anyways, so yeah, there's kind of a bit of a banter for everybody. So that kind of gives a setup. Got a couple of genres here, and so we're going to get it kicked off with a beginning scene. So we kind of got the setup, and we're going to see how kind of we step into this story. Reed, do you want to give us a beginning scene?
Yes. Okay. You just everything is slate gray. We're talking about dawn, first light. And it's a beach, and waves are crashing on the beach. Not gentle waves, but pretty,
Autumn waves.
yeah, stiff wind coming offshore. There's was just first light. So it's a slate gray sky, and it's a slate gray ocean. And you've got 18 men and 12 horses. It appears to be 12 horses. A couple of them have scampered off down the beach. Couple of them are standing around. These guys, among these are three noblemen. There's a duke who was kind of the leader of the expedition,
Right.
and two of his barons, and 12 men-at-arms, and 3 archers. And there's a problem. None of the armor made it. None of the helmets made it. These are guys who, are trained to do battle in heavy armor. But they were shipwrecked. They were in a terrible storm. They were headed to the Holy Land. They were crusaders. And first they pulled all the tack off the horses as the ship was breaking up. And they tried to throw some swords in they got a couple of crates, couple of boxes but mostly they were just hanging on to flotsam. Most of the guys tried to keep their own sword. A couple of the guys were afraid they were drowning, and so they ditched their sword and were able to keep their head above enough water to get in. The 3 archers, they kept their bows and a quiver. But these are knights. These are medieval crusader warriors that are basically on the beach with whatever flotsam came up with them, broken pieces of the ship. These guys are exhausted from just trying to keep their head above water in the crashing waves, and they kept trying to swim toward the sound of the surf breaking, and finally made it to shore. They have no idea what shore it is, if it's an island or it could be anything. And as the light comes up, first thing they want to gather their horses. So a couple of the guys head down the beach to try to gather the horses that have wandered off and decide what to do. They do an inventory of the weapons. A couple of the guys recognize, that sword's mine, or another one is like one of the lower guys. And so like one of the higher guys gets his sword and he doesn't really feel like he's in a position to claim it. So there's some of them are like warriors, but armed with sticks and stones, whatever they can find on the beach. And they don't know if they're in a hostile environment or not. And just as they're gathering themselves and doing inventory and figuring out what have they got to start out with, they see some people peering at them through some bushes up the shore a ways, from peering at them from cover. And they don't know, but they are not alone. So that's the beginning scene.
Cool.
Okay, look at the beginning scene. They're washed up on shore. Just to kind of recap this, I'm trying to take some notes here. So we're kind of starting out here, it's, first light, kind of autumn weather, the gray tone of that kind of ocean, kind of light, as, the sun is coming up and there's been a storm. 18 men have survived, somewhere around 12 horses. They're scattered over the beach. The array of people, we've got 3 nobles, a duke, 2 barons, 12 men-at-arms, 3 archers. They untacked the horses as the ship was going down, tried to grab as many supplies or weapons as they could. Made their way to shore. They're taking inventory. They're kind of spreading out, seeing where they're at. They don't know where they might have ended up at, if they're in hostile territory. And as they're taking inventory and starting to kind of regather around what they should be doing, they notice that they're not alone and that they are being watched. So, with that, I'm going to move over to Levi, and do you have any idea of like a prophecy maybe that might indicate maybe why they're here, or, maybe some mission, something that might have been said to them beforehand? I don't know. Something that might give us an indication of...
Yeah, absolutely. My thought is that since there's, like you said, there's a baron traveling with them.
Two barons and a duke.
There was something that... my brain is saying this is kind of like a Jonah situation, right? Like he was told to go one way to do something, but instead he decided to, maybe they're not on their way to the Holy Lands, but maybe he's like running away from the Holy Lands.
Ooh.
Like, yeah, they're quote unquote on their way. You know, they were on a boat. And he's kind of like, he's running away from his responsibilities. You know, I think makes me think kind of like, what was that one with Orlando Bloom? Kingdom Come?
Oh, Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven, where he kind of like inherited a whole estate in Israel, where he's like, this baron is supposed to go and recover this and do something with this, but he doesn't. You know, there could be something where this connection with this other world has something like, maybe this baron's like line of crusaders or line of Templars like protect the keys between the worlds, and so he has something that inadvertently sent them along this path. You know, he has a key to his house in France and he has a key to his house in Israel, and they're made of two different types of materials, but when you kind of layer them together they turn into a key, and it like causes the resonance that transported them here. So typically it's not a problem, but because he has both, and he has kind of failed to like, it's not a prophecy as it were. It's more so like his estates in France. There were people there and there were writings talking about like responsibility and things like that. And kind of decrying, and you know how like Proverbs talks about like the results of not listening to wisdom. Mm-hmm. So this is a thing that he knows, and obviously all of his foot soldiers know, like about honor and duty and responsibility, but he is avoiding, and he's kind of reaping the whirlwind now.
Sort of like
that. Not like a decreed prophecy, but like a consequences of your actions kind of prophecy.
It's like the prophecy that says, he who he is constantly reproved, yet stiffens his neck will suddenly be broken beyond repair. One of those.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And he kind of I don't know if he's going to be the hero or not, but he kind of is for the first little bit of this beginning scene. He's just like in total shock, you know, because this isn't supposed to happen. That storm came out of nowhere. The captain said that there's no way that this could have happened. You know, there's all of these things, and because of the fact that he knows, like Jonah, that he's dodging his duty, all like immediately he knows that it was him, that he was the one who did it. You know, and that might be a little bit. I don't know.
And
that
is that
seems
the
like kind of the
Duke
way
or the Baron, or one of the Barons?
The Duke is the head guy.
Whichever one's the head guy.
Yeah, the Duke. The Duke.
I don't know how that works, but so the Duke is the higher one. So yeah, just whoever is the head guy, he is kind of he was set with a task and has come up against the consequences of avoiding that task. You know, so I guess it's not like a prophecy, but it's kind of like a prophecy because he's reaping the benefits of not having done what he should.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, something kind of mystical, and perhaps it's tied to the keys, and maybe later when we can get into some, you know, unique artifacts, you know, maybe we can explain the keys more. But I have a couple other elements, and maybe that might explain what the keys are, depending what you guys, you know, come up with.
And
I think there
could be something in his crest, you know, like his family motto. You know, it's like something about holding the door, something about guarding the gate, something about, you know, protecting the road, something that like calls up the fact that this is what his family has done since time immemorial, and he is the one breaking that. So
okay, I know that I'm hosting, but like I don't know, I had an idea on what it could be, but
let's hear it.
Okay, so if this makes sense, so one of the readings, I believe it was not this week, but last week for the gospel reading, I think it was. No, it wasn't that. It was something else that but anyways, the story of the pool of Siloam, right, where the angel comes down and stirs up the water.
Right.
Perhaps there was something, because then in some of that lore, you have where Christ gives the keys of the kingdom to the apostles, right? But then also with that, perhaps there was something where then in that time period, if there was an amount of like under that same principle, if someone understands that Christ was taking the authority from the Jewish rulers, right? Perhaps they locked that, whatever that avenue up.
Okay.
And so it's locked up, but that whatever, something with the key to reopen it is somehow landed on
So the key that he has is the key to the pool of Silouan?
right, that would then like open that for like the angel to come down and stir the waters to allow the miraculous healings from it, right? Which
Right.
could be maybe just something where some of that is things like that were locked away,
Right,
right?
right.
But then just kind of like never unlocked. Like, and not in like a general term, it's not like miracles couldn't happen, but like that's why I was thinking maybe something like that specifically, right?
Well, yeah,
Some
if you think
avenue
about
like that specifically that like, oh, this was, I'm just thinking from like the Jewish perspective, right? Like Christ did this healing, it had to do with the pool. We need to like get rid of this thing. And somehow metaphysically or however that worked, they locked it back up, but it's not been unlocked. But whatever, I don't know. It was just something that crossed my mind. But
yeah, no, what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So, locked doesn't necessarily mean with a key only. So,
yeah, who knows? Anyways, that was just something that ran past my head. But I'll try to get to narrating to the moderation here. So, kind of the prophecy. What we've got then is it's more of like a Jonah situation. You've got this Duke. He knows that he's running from something that he needs to step up to and is called to do, and maybe he's the one that knows it. No one else knows that. Perhaps he set out to do this thing under the guise of going to the Holy Land, but really it was to kind of get away from some other responsibility he had. And so it's not so much a rote prophecy like it was written on the stones or seen in the stars or,
right, right,
said by a prophet, but more like a inerrant like wisdom of all time, like the consequences for actions, kind of like a metaphysical punishment for, kind of going against, that unseen thing in the background and taking
right,
a different action.
right.
And then that would be the Duke. And that's kind of what we got for the prophecy.
I forgot one thing from the opening scene.
Okay.
Because I didn't have it written down, but when my original idea was that there was among the survivors, there was no one from the ship's crew. And what had happened was when they started hitting the rocks, hitting the shoals, like the ship's crew, everybody was trying to scramble to see, save if they could save some valuables or whatever, and the ship's crew managed to launch a boat, and they just lit out. The ship's crew just abandoned them to save themselves, and that's why there's no ship's crew that survived.
Gotcha.
They might have be still out there floating around in the ocean because the rest of these poor saps, the ship was breaking up, and they grabbed what flotsam they could and kept going swimming toward the crashing waves, and then some didn't make, some drowned, of course. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that detail in. So there's a little bitterness going on against the ship's crew, but nobody has twigged to the idea that what the Duke knows is that this was probably a consequence of his disobedience.
It also means that there is no one there who is like super well versed in survival. It's like you have military people, and it's like some of them might be with hunting, but if you think about it, like a person who is a trained military personnel, like they know how to fight.
The other part of that was that they don't have any crewmen with them who would be able to use their skills or their expertise in navigation by using the stars or whatever to chart out exactly where they might be. So they don't know, they don't have a frame of reference to know where they might be.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to get to the third element here, and that's going to be how did I put that down? It was like the Pantheon / magic system, right? So it can kind of pull from both of those elements a little bit, depending on how you might want to bring it out. But like, so this land that they find themselves in, right? What is kind of the mode of operation of their form of worship, and how does that affect how magic works here, right? Which is kind of the sandbox idea, so that it can be, something, it doesn't have to directly pull from what we know or think of our real world, but can kind of borrow elements or take it in its own direction with how magic, worship of what kind of pantheon kind of structure of that is going on. So let's hear that from Reed.
Well, the timid observers, they decide to send forth an envoy. So 3 men come, and they're dressed. Their manner of dress is something different from the knights. They've got their clothing is finely woven wool, it looks like, and sturdy but well-constructed garments.
And is this coming from the people that are shipwrecked, or is this coming from the people
these are
that have
the
been
people. There are people now that have been peeking at them from behind the bushes. Like an emissary has come forward, 3 men to come and say, like, who might you be, kinds of things. But they're not wearing badges of office. They're not wearing rich adornments of, gold armbands or gold clasps or medallions around their necks. They're plainly but finely dressed. Does that make any sense? Their garments are well constructed, rich, but there's nothing flashy or gaudy about it. And they come down and they, acknowledge that we see that you are.
Do they share the same language?
Ooh, hadn't never even thought about that.
So I don't know. So this is taking from kind of an idea from something. There was I think it was a manga. I think they made an anime of it. I can't quite remember the name, but it was like this gate to another world opens, right? And then they kind of go in there. And the idea was with like the last time that this opened would have been during like the Roman times. So the most advanced civilization in this other place would have been the Romans. And if you follow back, the other things kind of follow farther back in time to like older things that then would have been overrun and taken over by that next civilization on down like the line.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like approach.
I'm thinking that these guys come forward and they begin to speak words of welcome, but they're not intelligible. However, there are some phrases and some things that they say that appear to have some connection with Latin or a Latin-like language. And so the Duke and the 2 barons have had some schooling and they recognize some words. So then they begin this process of trying to sort out, what they understand for what they say. So you're having a connection of people coming together that have a language barrier, and they've got some words that seem similar to what they learned in their education, in their tutoring as when they were younger, and so they're trying to sort out some meaning. And one of the things they gesture, food. They gesture with their mouth, and then these guys have have a bag, and they have some sort of a bread like biscuit like thing, and they pass out what food they've got, and these guys are hungry and they eat, and then they've got fresh water, and they've from a wine, a skin, they've got fresh water, and they're doing some, the whole giving them food and drink. So there doesn't appear to be hostility, and there's just the 3 of them, but then with the realization that they're probably being observed. They're probably, they came with their palms up, with their hands forward with their palms, kind of to denote our hands are empty. We are not coming in violence, So this is hopefully a peaceful emissary, at least on the part of the inhabitants of this place that are making contact. And I think that but they're very interested in the horses, and especially when 2 come back riding 2 of the horses bareback that had strayed down the beach. They jump off, and this really alarmed, the whole thing with the horses really alarms and startles them, and they're fascinated with this. So, because it's like as if surprised by it, we don't have these kinds of riding beasts, or something like that. And one of the people in the emissary makes kind of like signs with his hands, as if he's warding off something spiritual. Like there seems to be some sort of a ritualistic connection with the unseen world, so to speak, and that they're afraid, a little startled and afraid, and what is the deal with these riding beasts, and in case it's some magic or something that's beyond their ken. There's one guy that has got a staff. He's the only one that's not open, just completely open-handed, but he makes kind of a sign with his hands that are as if he's warding something off or making a gesture to ward off anything that might be threatening or something like that. There's a wariness on both sides. Just put it that way.
Absolutely.
So some of the kind of how they do things is still kind of unbeknownst. Any type of magic system itself isn't revealed unless there's something more subtle going on in an unseen background with these hand signs they're making. They seem very unfamiliar with the horses, kind of see them as possibly something possibly evil, but not sure because the communication's very limited. Obviously hand gestures and, the, universal signs of, open palms, not armed, calm demeanor has made some headway. There's some amount of, a possible Latin root or maybe some form of Latin in some of their words. So there's something to go off of, but not enough to, make a hard conversation with any verbal. There's one of these people, they have a staff. They seem to be the one that was more, directly involved in kind of this ward off of evil when they kind of were approached with the horses.
Yeah, I had in my mind that they're thinking this guy is like some kind of holy man. He's kind of carrying himself with that demeanor.
This whole time, the Duke knows the language that they're speaking, right? Because he was taught it growing up. But he's working very hard at not understanding what's going on. Having lived most of his life just kind of being like, my father told me all these things were very important, but he's dead now,
And here's an idea with that. What if he was like a monk, right?
His father?
No, he was our Duke, right? What if he was a monk or something like prepping for like the priesthood or something, right? Something a little bit more elevated, right? But then his father and maybe his older brother die in the Holy Land, right? Which then kind of, because there's someone important, he gets pulled out of that and put back as the head of this family.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Would that kind of situation make sense?
Yeah.
That would kind of give an explanation to why he'd have some more of the education, why he'd maybe know what these people were saying, or at least the Latin, and maybe give someone with, let's say, some of the other side of the world's, religious perspective to bring to this side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. I kind of like this, that it's not so much explained right now, but I think this is definitely something that can be added on to, depending what we get with the next element we have for today, and then maybe some of the next ones over the next couple weeks. This kind of makes it interesting, like, okay, how does this play out? There's obviously something, right? There's, they're obviously making signs, there's a language, the Duke can understand it, but he's not letting on. It's very mysterious. I like it. So the next element for kind of the setup, go to you, Levi. Like government, economic system, like, give us a small peek maybe into, right? We're kind of meeting them on the beach. We don't know much right now, but perhaps an explanation of maybe what's going on with how their society is structured governmentally or economically. Absolutely. That might shed some more light on this.
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll say is that the world that exists here where these people exist, this other fantasy world, is built much differently than our world. It's a lot of mountains. It's a lot of moors and rolling plains. There are some forests, but they're difficult to traverse. And another thing that's true about them is that we have a thing on Earth called the near surface minerals, right? So it's the minerals that are close to the surface that we mine, right? This planet does not have those. In fact, this planet doesn't have a lot of things that In fact, when the ship first crossed over, if people had been aware of it, a lot of the buckles and clasps and things that were made of brass, they would have noticed very quick oxidation and just a rotting of. That's one of the reasons why the boat kind of fell apart, is because the brass couplers and nails and things that were holding it together simply rotted away.
Ooh.
So what persisted, though, was Corinthian steel. What persisted, though, which is so interesting when I was thinking about this, when Reed was saying that they couldn't get any armor and they got a couple swords, because what persisted, this is a place without iron, without steel, without silver or gold. So when they show up with bodkin arrows, tips, with gold rings, with silver, with steel swords, with chain mail, which they don't all have because of the shipwreck. Only some of them have. It's like an immediate position of power and wealth, right? And what would be the ultimate position of power and wealth is the 2 keys made of some totally unknown and totally incorruptible metal that the Duke has hidden under his shirt because he's terrified of showing them and showing everyone that it was him. So these people, the hierarchy for their government and how their economy is structured is on scales of denseness and toughness, right? So it starts with, shale, rock, sticks, things that are nothing. Those have no value. It increases if you know where a bedrock or a granite mine quarry is. If you know where a quarry mine is, that's like a gold mine, right? People find trace elements. A person his family might grow for 100 years, and they might be able to form a single ring of iron, and that is the entire family's collected wealth. They might have like a single bead of gold, and that's like a kingdom's worth of wealth. So these people come in, and the poorest of the poor archer has a silver coin on him, which is the equivalent GDP of the biggest city, right? These people are going to ruin the economy. And they don't notice it very quickly because the foreigners, not the foreigners, they're the foreigners. The natives who come, they're bedecked with jewels, right? Because jewels you can find. Jewels and diamonds you can find. And so, rubies are a dime a dozen. Even though they're very tough, diamonds are very tough, and so they're very valuable, but you can't form a diamond into a sword or a shield, So it's valuable only because it's very strong, not because it's very useful and very strong. So as soon as they sort of develop, as soon as they kind of reveal the fact that they have steel on them, that they have swords on them, they are very quickly kind of heralded as not gods, but like rich messengers of gods, people way more just out of their league financially, like a guy has a gauntlet, and it's like part of it was secured with brass rivets, and so he's kind of messing with it, and it's like not working, and he kind of takes it off and just like throws it on the ground in disgust, and like the natives look at it and are like, oh my goodness, and they like run over and they're like ripping it apart because it's there's like little bands of iron and steel in this. Like, do you know how valuable this is? So that's kind of the economy. So the Crusaders, the foreigners, the people have the ability to basically buy everything, whatever they want. And people are constantly treating them with awe, and displaying their very, a person might have a finishing nail's worth of metal, and it's like, I give this to the village, and everyone gives their small amount to the village, and we are able to form a single knife, right? And that's our village's greatest, that's our village's collected wealth. So I get kind of got that from like, if you're playing D&D and you have a lot of money and you come into like a little tiny village or a little tiny town or city, and you just like go and spend 15,000 gold and like buy all the health potions and all the magic items and all the armor and every single potion and every single scroll out of the magic shop, how you essentially like crash the economy of that town because you just like it can't deal with that. That's kind of what is moving towards happening here, which is interesting because that archer was definitely willing to like break off a single bodkin arrow head and trade it to somebody for a diamond the size of an egg, because to him the diamond is very rare.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of the government system, because you'll see it as they meet new people who are higher up in the government, they'll be adorned with more, they'll meet a guy who's wearing like shingle armor that's made of pieces of granite. They'll meet people who have a piece of, who have a single gauntlet of steel, and this is like a position of power. And the idea is that as soon as they revealed themselves and the amount of metal they have, they basically just need to, like, whoever has the most metal just needs to like get to the capital city and can just like kick whoever is at the top of the totem pole off and just become the king because he has all this, so that means that he is like well favored by his community, well supported by his community, loved by the gods, like everything is going his way because he has all of this, where other people have, diamonds, or, one person might carry around a piece of granite, and that like symbolizes his position in office because he has the strength to and is supported by his community enough to hold this. Therefore, he's considered someone worth talking to. Therefore, he has a place in leadership in the government.
So, as kind of like a way to kind of see this, their government would kind of be like like a patriarchy, kind of like a godfather thing, right? Some family or community member that's kind of held in a place of honor for being like the wise man, the kind of the top tier, sorts everything out, right? And he's given higher honor over the generations as more of this particular wealth has accumulated, and so he's kind of set above and everybody has kind of turned to him, but his status is also seen and adorned by the things that he's kind of accumulated through that position as it's passed on from the community. So it's kind of like a communal patriarchy.
Yeah, and it's the idea is that the wealth is accrued and distributed into this incredibly rare resource like iron, but then people come from another world where iron is not a rare resource. And so it just like throws the whole system that they've built sideways because it was based on the fact that it was supposed to be rare and it's not rare to these people. And so it just kind of throws the whole thing on its head, in good ways and maybe in bad ways too, because they're going to like ruin a bunch of people's economies by doing it this way,
Yeah. So I think that wraps up. I had picked like four elements for this week, and kind of by proxy, with the magic system, pantheon, government, economic system, that kind of did like a double on each of those. So I think, to kind of wrap it up, we got a beginning scene, these crusaders, they find themselves washed up on a beach. They had untacked the horses. They make it to the beach. They grabbed what they could. They think it's like very little. But unbeknownst to them, with our economic system, metal is an extremely rare thing. So even kind of the things that are deteriorated a little bit from the sea, the very few things they have is going to really upset this place. Our prophecy is more of like a Jonah situation. Our character, the Duke, we don't have a name for him. Maybe we can bring that in next week, with some characters, and who they're going to be all together. He's kind of, running from something where he should have been, or, whatever it is, has some learning, has some training, was probably pulled out of, either a monastery or a priest class to take over his family's house after his father and his brother die in the Holy Land, thus putting him at, the need to take over this house, or this dukedom. So then whatever he's done, he's gone off course and is kind of suffering the consequences of his actions on kind of the metaphysical level. Our pantheon and our magic system is still pretty kind of mysterious. As we're gonna hopefully find out more of how that interacts with this thing in the weeks to come, but it's kind of something interesting where like they don't have beasts of burden. You have the environment is very mountainous, plains, moors, very little forest, so it's a very resource or usable resource like we might consider lack environment.
Yeah.
Metals are held in very high regard. It takes generations of going through all these kind of harder stones and going through many, many things just to get little bits of metal that then accumulate over time to kind of get like a ceremonial knife or a gauntlet or, a signet ring or something. Jewels, gems, those are in high abundance. And so, the economy is due for like a huge tipping point. I think as, moderator, I'll go ahead and give this thing a name.
Yeah.
We'll call it Crusader Metal Gods.
Crusader Metal Gods. Cool. That sounds really metal and ominous.
Yeah.
I was going to say an ominous, but I said an anonymous.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other like quick thoughts anybody has to add or comment on kind of what got presented or
I think it's cool. I think it's cool so far.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as they realize that this where they are, they're not in Kansas anymore. They're going to realize that the world that they're so caught up in, the crusade to the Holy Land is just not a thing. This is they're going to have to make their way among a group of people and totally rethink the whole notion of how to trade, what is valuable. They've got skills. Obviously, I'm curious to see how maybe they end up connecting themselves to a leader, and with the use of the horses, that might loom large in introducing the notion of a mounted warrior class. That's
Right. They could be weirded out of that because there is, like, only the royal guards have a heavy mounted cavalry.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you guys doing? Only the royal guards have these.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, or perhaps the horses that they have, being they have like a plains, perhaps it's more of like a smaller or more wild like zebra type animal.
Right.
So it's
Something
like
more like a pony.
Yeah, something where it's like it makes them set apart and a little bit ceremonial, but it's like hard to get them in line and make them ruly. And so it's like there's maybe just those, few of them.
I think some of these, like I think of Goliath, the big black horse in Lady Hawk. These big giant war horses. I think that'd be a pretty ominous kind of looking thing to deal with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right,
Cool.
so I think, if we wrap it up there, let us know if you like this new style. You can send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or shoot us a message on Twitter at getsbettercast, right?
Correct.
At getsbettercast. And let us know what you think. Maybe throw out some ideas, see maybe what you might want to throw at us for this story. Maybe I picked a bad name. Maybe, I don't know. Tell us.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.